Hello, I am Zainab Nejati from the King County Auditor's Office, and together with Cindy Drake, we'll be presenting the findings from our office's performance audit of the Fish Passage Restoration Program. Before we talk about the findings of our audit, I wanted to provide a little background on salmon and fish passage barriers. Salmon are important to our region. They support a robust economy, they are a food source for the endangered orcas, and tribes are guaranteed the right to harvest fish by treaty. One of the leading causes of the decline of salmon populations in Washington state are barriers and waterways. Fish passage barriers block salmon from reaching the habitat they need to reproduce. On the left-hand side of the screen is a photo of the most common type of barrier, a road culvert. These culverts are added so that streams can continue to flow after a road is constructed. In this case, the culvert is the barrier because it is too high up for fish to pass through. On the right-hand side of the screen is a location where a barrier culvert was removed and replaced with a structure that fish can pass through and ultimately reach habitat upstream. In 2018, the executive initiated the Fish Passage Restoration Program to address fish passage barriers. The program is led by the Water and Land Resources Division with participation from the Parks and Road Services Division. The program primarily focuses on addressing county-owned barriers to fish passage. The executive has stated that the program will accelerate investments in barrier removal with the expressed goal of opening up the best habitat for the most fish as quickly as possible. And so this is one of the things we focused on during our audit. There are a couple key takeaways from our audit. First, while the program has the stated goal to restore access to the best habitat for salmon as fast as possible, the program's ordering of barrier removals is not aligned with that goal. Second, the program's performance measures don't measure how much access to habitat has actually increased after a barrier is removed. And lastly, expanding consultation with local tribes could increase the program's impact and better meet county goals. As we move forward through the presentation, you'll see these icons at the bottom right hand of your screen so you can tell which of the key takeaways we are talking about in further detail. In order to determine exactly where King County should invest resources to achieve the best outcomes, the program worked collaboratively with representatives from groups including local tribes and state agencies. Together, they created a prioritization model which considers factors such as the stream's potential to support salmon, a watershed's tree cover, and whether there were other barriers downstream. And using this model, they assigned priority scores to every county-owned barrier. This scoring method created some level of consensus about which barriers block the most and best salmon habitat. The prioritization process also showed that the amount of habitat blocked by a county-owned barrier can vary significantly. Through this process, the program determined that of the 900 plus existing barriers, they would need to remedy only about 45 or less than 5% of them to get to 50% of the possible habitat gain, which could be achieved by removing all county-owned barriers. However, when the program went to determine how to order the barrier removals, the program didn't schedule barrier removals according to those priority scores alone. As a reminder, the priority scores identified where the best habitat and therefore the greatest impact is for salmon. Rather, staff worked together internally to order projects considering asset management needs and projects with prior appropriations, in addition to the priority scores. As a result, the program schedules some high habitat gain barrier removals to be completed after lower impact barriers, creating a disconnect between the program's implementation and its publicly stated goal of opening up the best habitat the fastest. Work plan is therefore a mix of two types of projects, which we will talk about over the next few slides. The first group are habitat-focused projects, which are the barriers which received either one of the top 50 priority scores, are within that group of around 45 barriers the county could remove and achieve half the total habitat gain possible, or their downstream barriers. These are those barriers which are really aligned with that best habitat, the fastest goal. An example of this would be the Black River Pump Station, which the program found is blocking around 7% of all habitat blocked by county-owned barriers. The second group are infrastructure-focused projects. These are asset management projects which were not identified as opening up the best or most habitat. An example of this would be a project at Merrimore Dog Park, which removes 2 fish passage barriers, which combined block less than 0.25% of habitat. Now, this slide shows the expected habitat gain of the program's 10-year work plan based upon the percentage of habitat gain expected in each year. With the program's current ordering of barrier removals, nearly half of the habitat gain expected from the program's 10-year work plan occurs in the last 3 years, with design for the first of these projects not starting until 2026. This is the result of the early years of the program having many infrastructure-focused barrier removals rather than those habitat-focused barrier removals with high priority scores. This slide shows the total count of barriers to be removed each year, with blue bars representing habitat-focused barrier removals and orange bars representing infrastructure-focused barrier removals. And in the first 5 years of the work plan, over half the barrier removals planned are infrastructure focused. Program staff explained that the agencies have multiple demands on limited resources, and the resulting sequencing balances roads and parks maintenance needs with fish habitat gains. However, the result is that the program is not aligned with its publicly stated goals of opening up the best habitat the fastest. To address these issues, we make several recommendations. We recommend that the program develop a strategic plan that clarifies the goals and objectives of the program. The work plan should then be updated to ensure it is in alignment with the developed strategic plan. And finally, that the program should ensure public documents accurately reflect the program, including the decision-making considerations and trade-offs involved in its work plan development and the resulting schedule of projects. The strategic planning process also creates an opportunity for the program to create meaningful performance metrics, which measure both outcome and output towards those goals. The program's current performance measures overstate impact because they don't consider how barriers not owned by the county affect access to habitat. When the program removes a barrier, it reports out on stream miles restored. However, the stream miles reported restored by the program are measured to the next county-owned barrier. In many cases, there are barriers owned by other entities, which are located between county-owned barriers. Without also considering the impact of those other barriers from reporting on habitat gain, the program is overstating the length of salmon, the length of stream to which salmon now have access to, and therefore the impact of the program. Because of this, as the program develops their strategic plan, we make a recommendation that they also develop performance measures that accurately reflect the program's output and outcomes for restoring access to habitat, including considering the impact of non-county barriers. And now I will turn the presentation over to Cindy Drake, who will talk about our findings around consultation with local tribes.
Thank you, Zainab. Cindy Drake from the King County Auditor's Office. As Zainab said, I'm going to talk a bit about ways the program can improve collaboration with local tribes. And I just want to start by going back to some information that Zainab mentioned at the beginning. One of the reasons that restoring salmon populations is important is because local tribes are guaranteed by treaty with the U.S. federal government the right of harvesting salmon, and declining populations of salmon infringe upon that right. Additionally, in the past, courts have found that fish passage barriers owned by Washington state infringe upon the tribe's treaty rights. So removing fish passage barriers is good for salmon, and it's also necessary for honoring tribal treaty rights. So far, King County hasn't been a party in these legal cases. The cases have been aimed at the state. But the county is increasing efforts to remove fish barriers as part of its express commitment to honor tribes' treaty rights, in addition to its broader commitment to salmon protection. When we spoke with representatives from local tribes about the program, these representatives generally spoke very highly of the program and its program manager, and they said they appreciated being consulted on the development of the priority scoring model that Zainab described. And so we want to highlight that our findings in this area are ways the program can expand work they're already doing. One key area for improvement is that the tribal representatives said that they were not given the opportunity to provide input into the ordering of barrier removals. So while they were involved with developing the model to prioritize which barriers to remove to achieve the greatest impact, they were not involved in the work plan that actually sequenced and scheduled those projects. Additionally, the tribes emphasize the importance of being involved in the planning of individual barrier removal projects early and often. County staff that manage barrier removal projects reported that they consult with local tribes at the time of permitting, but the representatives of the tribes reported that this timing doesn't give the tribes sufficient opportunity to have input onto projects. Specifically, the tribal representatives reported that earlier consultation could lead to quicker, shorter permitting timelines for some permits, and also could allow the tribes the opportunity to provide letters of support for grant applications, which are an important source of funding for this program. Program leadership told us that they do strive to engage with the tribes at all project stages, and they could help ensure this occurs consistently by developing a policy outlining this practice. Additionally, expanded consultation with the tribes could help the program ensure it is meeting county-wide priorities around partnering across governments and ensuring the people who are affected by county decisions are involved and provide input into the decision-making process. So we make two recommendations in the area of expanding consultation with the tribes. First, that the program should develop a plan that ensures ongoing consultation with local tribes, including getting input into the program's work plan that sequences barrier removals. And second, ensuring that local tribes are consulted throughout a project's life cycle. To recap, takeaways from the audit include that first, while the program has a stated goal to restore access to the best habitat for salmon as fast as possible, the program's ordering of fish passage barrier removals is not aligned with that goal. Second, the program's performance measures don't yet measure how much access to habitat has actually increased after removing a barrier. And third, expanding consultation with local tribes could improve the program's impact and better meet county goals. In our report, you'll also find information we didn't cover today, including how the program is related to the county's Clean Water Healthy Habitat Initiative and additional efforts that are needed there. The full report is available online on the auditor's website. Thank you.